Previously on Sword Art Online. I made an hour-long video about it, just go watch that. So I will not be going over the spin-off SAO Alternative Gun Gale Online for a couple reasons. One, I don't want to say that long-ass name more than once, and two, it has nothing to do with the main series, which is what I want to focus on. I did watch it to see if it had anything, and I will say it is the best Sword Art Online thing I have seen so far. It had some good characters, actual development for them, and some really fun and interesting ideas. I especially love how the show explained things to me. It actually had the character go through a tutorial for the game so I can learn with them while also being entertaining. It's also stupid that I now know more about the Seed and the new VR machine the characters use from a 1-minute exposition dump in the spin-off than anything explained to me in the main show. And I like it because, it just has certain things that appeal to me that aren't in the original. It's too bad I don't care about SAO or its world, or I'd actually like the show a bit more, I guess. So first, let's start with the films, and don't worry, these are actual movies, not the glorified clip show I saw before. Ordinal Scale I actually thought was pretty good. However, it also exemplifies a lot of the main issues with SAO. Is that SAO has some really interesting and creative concepts and ideas. It's just incredibly bad at executing them. So if you've never seen the film, I'll give you a brief summary. So get this, a brand new multiplayer game, the titular Ordinal Scale, made by a completely legitimate company, has just released, and it uses brand new augmented reality technology. How can this possibly go wrong in the world of Sword Art Online? Of course, protagonist and the harem are all about this new game, being gamers themselves. Also Klein. But suddenly, bosses from the original game of Sword Art Online start appearing in this new game, and instead of the SAO survivors throwing that shit in the trash and informing their government connections to investigate this company, we gotta get that SSR dropped from the raid boss. It does become their problem though when Asuna suddenly starts losing her memory of her time in SAO after dying in Ordinal Scale. Also Klein too, but no one cares about him. So protagonist has to figure out what's going on or his waifu will forget about him. But he's gonna have trouble since this is AR, it's real life, and if you die in real life, you die for real. And being the sweaty nerd he is, Protag Hood isn't as pro at this game as he was at the other ones. For the first half of the movie anyway. And in his way is a mysterious man known as the top player of Ordinal Scale, who has a strange connection to the Vocaloid idol of the game, Yuna. Will Protag beat this Giga Chad and save the day? Well, there's another season after this. And yes, I kid, we like to have fun here, but like I said, I did actually enjoy things about this movie. Again, like the show's technical aspects are all amazing. The animation is awesome, all the voice actors brought their S-tier game, the music is some of the best in SAO so far. Also, an interesting phenomenon started happening as I was watching this that's never happened before when watching SAO. I actually started caring about the conflict. Like, Asuna is the best character in the SAO franchise. If you don't agree, you're wrong. So anything bad happening to her immediately creates some tension. And they even explain it in the movie that while obviously SAO was a bad, Asuna had some good memories there, like meeting Protag. I wouldn't count that as one, but it's understandable that to her losing this memory is a bad and why protagonist needs to step up. I also like the idea of an AR game taking protagonist out of his element and having the antagonist be this dude who sucks at games, but because he's physically fit, he dominates an AR game. But that gets taken away pretty fast when protagonist gets on his level after one montage. Look, SAO, can you try to make it look like he's going to lose a fight for once? I know he's gonna win. I know that you know that we know he's gonna win. That's the nature of any anime ever. The main character's gonna win. That's not a surprise, but could you try to make it look like he's not? I'm just asking you to try. Honestly, there's nothing really, terrible or bad about this movie. What brings it down is just a lot of the usual things I don't like about SAO. Like a lot of the side characters, they still suck and are as useless as ever. SAO really has a problem of including characters for no other reason than to be there. Do we really need the lolly character doing a singing scene for like an idol? Was that integral to the plot? I mean, at least you had something to do, like getting Asuna killed. Whoops. The rest of them do fuck all. Liz, why is she here? Ashot doesn't even show her ass, so what's the point? Emo tits? I shit you not. The most impact that Sugaha has in this movie is a frame of animation that stays on screen for several seconds that has a detailed close-up of her boobs with a bag strap between them. That's all she is used for in this entire film. In both of these SAO videos, I would think a couple times when making it like, should I be calling her Emo Tits? I mean, that's an over-top nickname, it's kinda mean. But then moments like this happen, and it's like, oh no, even they just see her as a walking pair of breasts. Token is Black Klein. Well, something actually happens to him. He gets fucked up by Giga Chad, but no one cares. Like, literally, all the characters are like, where's Klein? Probably being a douche. What are you worried about your friend? Characters I'm supposed to like? Yeah, protagonist cares, I guess, that's something, but come on, why even have that moment when the call to action was what happened to Asuna? Antagonists, I call them wasted potential. So to spoil it, Chad and the creator of Ordinal Scale, who turns out to be evil, what a shock, are stealing memories of SAO survivors so they can sort of revive his daughter, who was the model used for the Vocaloid Yuna, by recreating some sort of AI using all of the collected memories from SAO survivors. Because Yuna was actually an SAO player that died in the game, so she died for real. She also had a connection with Chad in the game where he was garbage because, you know, he went outside, the fucking scrub. Chad would have been cool, but we can't have another good-looking male character with skills on par with the protag, so he's gotta go. And I hate that protag couldn't beats him with a sword fight. It's always just a sword fight. Now, excuse me for thinking that since it's established that Chad is a Giga, that protag would use some of that gamer knowledge to beat him. You know, like exploiting some broken item or some skill or stun locking him, you know, anything to make the fight different than any other one in the entire show. But no, he just destroys his cheat device that enhanced him or whatever, and he wins. Why doesn't Giga Chad just beat him up? I mean, he kicked Klein's ass earlier and his job were friends. It's the real world. You can just punch people. But I guess if he did that, I would just lose. I mean, Kirito would lose. I mean, the protagonist. Then there's Yuna's father, head of... I don't remember the company's name. I don't care. I don't get what this movie wants me to feel about this guy. Am I supposed to hate him? Sympathize with him? I'm confused. I mean, he wants to essentially revive his daughter by using memories to make an AI version of her, which is not healthy. That made me think, okay, I'm supposed to feel bad for this guy. You know, he's not evil, it's just his despair has clouded his judgment. But then he's totally cool with murdering 10,000 people to do it. Like, yeah, whatever, some other people's kids die, but I want my daughter and my Alexa. But then when he loses, the ghost of the daughter, or whatever she is, shows up and she's like, GG's, Dad. And the scene is framed like he's realized what he's done, and then he's recruited into the Avengers in the post-credits scene. Like, no, he's not mentally stable. You shouldn't be recruiting this guy. Some may say that's what makes him good, you know? You don't know how to feel about him. That's why he's so nuanced. No, this isn't nuanced. He's just not written that well. Even if he was some gray moral character, he's still really boring and uninteresting. I mean, he's just sad his daughter died in SAO. Get in line, dude, you and thousands of other people. It makes me feel bad for him more than anyone else because his daughter's a cute anime girl. I mean, I guess by default, he is the best antagonist SAO has had so far. Mainly because he didn't molest anybody. I guess that's the bar we're at. Also, I could not stand the ending to this movie. I did not like it. You might think it ends with protagonist and Chad's fight, but nope. Instead, for some stupid reason, it goes on for like 20 more minutes. In order to save the day, the gang have to beat the 100th floor boss of Aincrad. Seriously. Then out of nowhere, all the jobbers from the past 2 seasons show up to help out in some Avengers Assemble moment. Then out of nowhere, Yui, yeah, she's in this movie too, restores their save data from SAO, Elf Fetish, and Call of Duty, so they all have their OG outfits and characters. And my problem with this is, why is it here? Like, what is with this huge ass pull? I mean, I can believe this is happening in the context of the world of SAO. I mean, this is not the craziest thing it has done or will do. But for the film, like, why is this moment here? Am I supposed to clap and cheer? Like, yeah, they're in their original costumes. Yeah, huge nostalgia for a show that came out 6 years ago when this movie came out. Yeah. You know, it really just feels like the people that made this film watched one too many Marvel movies, you know, throw in a bunch of useless cameos at the end that feel completely out of place just to make the audience clap. I mean, obviously that's just pure speculation. I only think that because I watched this right after I did my Marvel video, and it just felt too MCU influenced to me. But yeah, the movie was fine. I feel very apathetic towards it. I mean, I'm just tired of SAO in general. Like, I just don't care anymore, dude. It's such a mid-series to me. Like, I know this isn't news to a lot of people these days, but like, the people who hate on it just blow it way out of proportion. It's not that bad. And all the people who love it, it's not that great. It's just okay, you know? Like, who cares? However, the second movie, or third, I guess, SAO Progressive Aria of a Starless Night, I think is actually the first genuinely great piece of media based on SAO that I have seen. Seriously, if you're tired of me complaining about the same things, God, I know I am, you're not going to find that here. This movie is really great. I loved it. So I mentioned it briefly in the last video, but SAO Progressive isn't trying to sell you insurance. It's, from what I gather, a retelling of the original Aincrad arc of SAO. Where the original squandered every opportunity to explore the interesting world of Aincrad, Progressive is a slower-paced series written by the original author Reki Kawahara that goes into more detail of the characters and their adventures on each floor. At least that's what I know about it, just because I've never read it and don't plan on it. But if it's anything like this movie, then it's probably pretty awesome. This movie is a retelling of the first few days of the SAO launch, but this time from the perspective of Asuna, showing her time days before the event up to the point she meets Protag-kun and beats the 4-1 boss, or the end of episode 2, I guess. The movie mainly focuses on a relationship with her friend Musumi Tozawa, who was the one who convinced Asuna to try SAO as they try to survive together. And yeah, that's the whole plot of the film. Simple, right? There's no villain, no mystery, simple story about the relationships between two characters trying to survive in a death game. And that's why it's so good. It's an SAO story that actually has characters with arcs and development, and they have personalities. Alright, by now, if you don't think Asuna is the best character, get out. And following her is way more interesting than Dorito. Because she's not a god gamer, she can't even Korean backdash and Tekken the bot, she barely plays games at all, so seeing her grow and change along with Misumi as their relationship keeps going is kinda heartwarming and fascinating to watch. I mean, yeah, her growing is mostly done through a montage, but it's a good montage this time. And having Asuna be a noob helps us as the audience who are also unfamiliar with this world get to know it better, since we are learning the same time as her. Natural exposition in SAO, someone call the news. Plus, she plays Tekken. I mean, bro, that's all I want from my waifus. More waifus should play fighting games. That's sexy as fuck. And really, this is all I personally wanted from SAO, characters with likable personalities that I don't want to see hurt try to navigate this hell they've been thrown into. So now I actually feel something when they are in danger. I actually care about what happens. You know what? This movie was so good. Asuna, I'm making you one of my official waifus. That's right. I'm gonna go out and maybe buy an anime figure of her and look up some hentai about her later. That's how you know it's real love. You know who I also like in this movie? Protagonist. That's right, I think Protagonist in this movie is pretty great, because he only shows up in the last half and they settled on one personality for him. He's a huge fucking dork. I did roll my eyes with his introduction, saving Asuna in a cool way, but immediately I liked it because he tries to put his sword away in a cool manner, but misses, and then can't even look her in the eyes when he's trying to help her because of how awkward he is. In this 5-minute introduction scene in this film, I know more about this guy, who he is, and how he acts than 2 seasons of a show. This is what I think the character of Kirito should be like. Yeah, when it comes to games, he can stay the super ultra badass, that's fine, but when he has to interact with others, make him an uber loser that doesn't know how to talk to real people. I like that, it's kind of charming. I am that. If I have anything negative to say about this film, it's that the second half is just a really long version of episode 2 of the anime. Like seriously, some of it's word for word. But considering I just spent most of my time in the last movie bitching about everything, if that's my only complaint about this one, I don't really think it matters that much. Unfortunately, the second movie, Scherzo of Deep Night, is really boring. Side note, these titles need to stop. Aria of a Starless Night, Scherzo of Deep Night. You're better progressive, but you're still wish fulfillment anime. I mean, you have a scene where 2 girls in swimsuits fight with vegetables. Stop trying to sound more important than you are. Anyways, this film is filler. The whole plot is about these 2 guilds having a feud, and a minor faction in one is planning to kill the floor 6 boss with some sneaky tactics, cause some info has gone around that the item rewarded for beating it is a flag that gives a buff to all guild members, so if a guild gets it, they get a major advantage going forward. Who cares? I mean, I'm sorry, I thought the whole point of SAO was to beat the bosses so everyone could, you know, get out of this death game. So what if some assholes get a buff for their guild? Isn't that a good thing? Throw them to each boss first, who cares? I mean, okay, while it's not made incredibly clear, it seems the assholes might be the first hints of Laughing Coffin, the murder guild. So yeah, it'd be bad if they got it. But unless you've seen SAO before, you don't really know that. I think that's one major problem with this film. It just feels like setup for shit you already know is going to happen if you've seen the anime, like setting up Laughing Coffin, or protagonist straight up saying, Asuna might be good, she might even be a higher ranked person in one of the best guilds. Like, yeah, I've seen SAO protagonist, I know that's gonna happen, you don't need to remind me. And so many scenes in this movie are just people sitting around in one location and talking. It feels too much like a straight up adaptation of the light novel, which again I've never read, but I do know scenes of people sitting and talking works better in book form than film because, you know, no visuals. I mean, the story itself is so boring. I don't care about stupid Aincrad politics of guilds. It's so uninteresting as the main story for a film. It comes to SAO for politics anyway. I only come for cool fights and titties, and yes, I mean it in the way you think I mean it, and there's barely any of those in this movie. I mean, I get it, it's a mini arc that mainly set up the Murder Guild, and for a novel or an anime series, this would be a fine 4 to 5 episodes, couple chapters, whatever. Problem is, this is a film, and yes, it's a film series, but to me, every film in that series should feel important and stand on their own, filled with enough information and entertainment to make it stand out. But this felt more like, ooh, you want to see what happens next, just watch the next movie whenever that comes out. And again, it just kinda came off worse to me because I've seen the original, like nothing new or major happens in the events, it's just like this is Asuna and protagonist's first encounter with Laughing Coffin. That's the only thing that happens in this movie. The characters are also not as good. Protagonist is not as bad as main series protagonist, but he's no longer a huge nerd. He's slowly becoming that version of protagonist. I don't like, the gamer version. The information broker Argo getting more development is cool, I guess, considering she had, I think, just 2 lines in the first season and was never mentioned again. And I did like her, but she's just okay here. I have no strong feelings towards her. Just more fodder for the harem. The best part, obviously, was Asuna meeting Misumi again, and the two talk and even have a classic anime rivals fight to understand each other's feelings. Yes, more good character stuff like this, please. Less MMO politics. By the way, at this point in writing the script, I definitely knew I wasn't going to be reading the light novels anytime soon, because upon Googling her, to make sure, I got her name right for this script, Misumi is a movie original character, apparently. Which means one of the few things I think is great about SAO, like her and Asuna's relationship, didn't actually come from SAO. I gotta watch 47 episodes after this. The movie, again, it's fine. It's not bad. I just found it incredibly boring. This is an arc I can assume is better reading rather than watching, and honestly, it's really killed Heidi hype for future movies that I had, considering it has its high praise for the first one. Now, despite me not liking that one in terms of overall quality, especially comparing it to the original, I think Progressive does show Reki Kawahara, the creator, is taking criticism and improving in his work. Now, a lot of people, including me, say the worst part of SAO is his writing. Even he has admitted in interviews the beginning of SAO was rushed, not well thought out, and nowhere near the quality it should have been. And series like Progressive show that he has taken the criticism to heart and is using it to improve what he knows could have been great. And I make a lot of jokes, but I think that deserves credit. There are many creators that continue making shit even though everyone tells them how bad the things they are doing are. So seeing him revisit his old work and turning it into something that it seems everyone agrees is pretty good is very admirable. Cause sure, he's made some bad stuff before, but everyone does, but what separates the good creators from the bad ones is the ability to recognize your faults and work on them. I mean, come on, just cause the guy made Excel World doesn't mean he's a lost cause. It just means he came really close to being one. And yeah, sure, everyone likes Progressive, but remember, the original series is still running. And after many years, the actual anime series of, I don't know, the main universe, got 2 new seasons. Or it's one season separated into arcs, but it's also separated there, I don't know. Anime's confusing. And all 3 of you who watch these videos have probably been wondering, geez man, why'd part 2 take so long? It's been almost a year. Well, the Alicization is the reason. Now remember, despite my great praise for the Progressive movies, I still don't like SAO. I'm not really that interested in it. I still don't like any of these people besides Asuna, or care about what's happening, if my thoughts on Ordinal Scale didn't make that evident. So it came to a spin-off and some films. I was like, okay, a couple hours of my life watching a series I don't care about. Whatever, I gotta make the video, part 2, whatever. But 47 more episodes? Every time I was gonna start watching it for this video, I was like, yeah, I'll get to it tomorrow. And I said that every day for a few months. And if you haven't seen that last video, I'll repeat it for you. If it weren't for me making these videos about it, and I didn't already commit to a part 2, I would have stopped at season 1. But fans have told me that this is one of the best arcs of the show, and after seeing the movies and seeing the improvement on the writing, I still didn't want to watch this. So after playing all the Tomb Raiders, I was like, fuck it, I gotta do this eventually. Let's rip off the wax, get it done so I never have to talk about this series again. Oh no. I'm gonna have to talk about the games, aren't I? So I finally sat down and watched all of Altercation, and it was alright, I guess. I do agree, I think it is the best arc in SAO, but it's still SAO. Oh yeah, when typing Alicization, however you say that, in the script, it kept auto-correcting it to Altercation. So, Sword Art Online Project Altercation starts off interesting. We see a kid protagonist hanging out with 2 characters we've never even seen before, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Alice, and they all appear to be players in some sort of new game world. The 3 then set off to get ice from some cave of a frost dragon to keep their lunches cool, when Alice accidentally sort of enters the dark territory, a part of the world that is taboo to enter. After whatever the hell that is, the next day Alice is punished for her crimes and taken away by an Integrity Knight, one of the highest ranking titles in this world, and while Kirito tries to save her, Yu-Gi-Oh! For some reason, his eye glows red with an error message 871 and can't bring himself to move. And and then Kirito for the first time in his life gets bodied, and then wakes up as we know him today in some random facility. And then after that, anything interesting goes out the window for this 40-minute episode. Yes, the first episode is twice the length of a normal one, and that was all the first half, and then the second half is just a bunch of exposition. So after catching up with the Goon Squad, who are trying to fight some random player killers in GGO, something I am only mentioning because it does come back later, so pocket that scene for now. Protagonist explains to Asuna and Ashshot, sitting down in one location at Token's bar, that he is participating in a special program for Wrath. They're a mysterious company that works for the government. That's all you need to know about them. Protagonist spends a weekend in this fancy new full dive machine called the Soul Translator, or STL, which instead of using your brain, it connects to your Fluctlight. I will explain what a Fluctlight is later. I need to prepare myself for that. You should too. The world he goes to is called the Underworld, where time flows 1,000 times faster, where he basically lives a brand new life with no memory of his real-world counterpart. And when he logs out, all his memories of that time in there are erased, so he thinks he's testing some new fancy VR equipment. What it really is, I'll explain later. I hope you're getting prepared for it. After that long talk, when walking Asuna home, guess who shows up? Some random guy who was an SAO survivor and one of the accomplices of Death Gun. Kinda out of fucking nowhere. He does manage to inject Protagonist with that syringe stuff they use to kill all those people, and Protagonist, instead of dying, which what it's supposed to do, finds himself inside the Underworld, now retaining all of his memories from the real world. In the next episode, Protagonist runs into Yu-Gi-Oh! All grown up and seems to have no memory of who Protagonist is. All Yu-Gi-Oh! Knows is it's his fault Alice got taken away all those years ago, and his only purpose in life is to cut down this tree that just won't go down. And look, I'm not giving Yu-Gi-Oh! A nickname because I think he's an actual character. But with how his name is pronounced, if I call him Yu-Gi-Oh! A couple of times, it's not intentional, it just feels more natural. Protagonist eventually meets Alice's little sister and learns more about the world, like objects have a rating and durability, and if humans' object control authority is above that, they can use and even damage that object. So Protag suggests to Yu-Gi-Oh! To try something harder than his axe to cut down the tree, which he says the only thing is a super fancy sword. They can't use it though because their object control authority is too low, so fudge it back to the axe. Then after Protag slips to Alice's Emoto she was taken away for stepping into the dark territory, she goes there for some reason. It's a stupid reason, don't worry. But now we got an excuse for a fight scene as Yu-Gi-Oh! And Protag save her by pulling a Goblin Slayer. After the fight, the two notice their authority has increased and are now able to cut down the tree with the cool sword. Since Yu-Gi-Oh! Has now fulfilled his purpose, he can pick a new one, and now inspired by plot armor and his new skills, he wants to become a swordsman, of course. Two bros then set off to night school so they can become swordsmen, so Yu-Gi-Oh! Can find Alice and bring her back home, and Protag can find his own way home? Oh yeah, he's stuck here, he doesn't really seem bothered by it. Now that was the fourth episode of the show, and I'll admit, I was invested by this point. I did think there was a lot of terminology that was unnecessary as well as over-explaining. Like Fluctlights, which is literally another word for a soul or your consciousness. It's what the new VR thing connects to instead of your brain. I don't know why they just can't say soul. Is that too unscientific? I also left a bunch of history about this legendary hero out in the world, because it does come back, but it doesn't really matter for my summary. Also, I liked that in this world, you can actually feel pain. Protag realizes this the hard way, so, too much and he could die, so there are actually some stakes here, unlike every other arc since the original one. Anyways, yes, I did enjoy these first few episodes, the setup for what the Underworld is, Protag's budding relationship with Yu-Gi-Oh!, finally a male character that seems to be on the same pedestal as Kirito, and best of all, Protag still having some of his sword skills, because of course he does, but since he has no memory of this place, he has to figure shit out, and by extension, we the audience are learning with him, making moments when someone just talks at him about a bunch of history feel more natural, and understanding things like magic in this world at the same time as him helps the pacing. And dude, I was actually kinda hyped after episode 4. I was like, sick, this series is gonna be like a classical fantasy road trip adventure, while at the same time Kirito somehow through his actions is gonna slowly find out like why he was brought here, the true purpose behind the project he was volunteering for, the corrupt class system in this world, this mysterious law called the Taboo Index is so feared and obeyed. Nope. Because after an episode where a bunch of high schoolers track down and infiltrate a secret government facility, okay, well to be fair, they do have the ultimate plot device in Yui, and at least Asuna look cool doing it. Either way, we find out everything in the next 2 episodes, which I think is a huge mistake. Because now all the mystery and intrigue in what this world that Kirito is in, and why he's here, it's all gone in like 40 minutes. He should have waited at least until the halfway point or something. It just felt too soon. So it's like this, Protag is still alive, but suffered major brain damage from the attack, so in order to speed up his recovery, Kikuoka who you may remember from such hits as calling a gamer to solve all the government's problems, abducted him and stuck him in the Soul Translator because stimulating his Fluctlight will help him because of science. And I hope you prepared yourself. Because what this whole Underworld thing is, and the explanation for it, is really convoluted, so instead of putting it in my own words, for you to hopefully understand what is happening, I'm just going to word for word read the SAO FanWiki description of the scene, okay? So, the Soul Translator was capable of making copies of a user's consciousness. To demonstrate this, Takeru, this blonde guy, he's a minor character, loaded a copy of his own Fluctlight, which self-destructed in dramatic fashion after a few minutes of existence. According to Kikuoka and Takadu, every Fluctlight copied from an adult individual had collapsed in a similar fashion, due to the Fluctlight's inability to comprehend that they were not the original individual. Wrath had circumvented this issue by using the prototype Soul Translator housed at Wrath's facilities in the Roppongi district of Tokyo to replicate the Fluctlights of infants, creating a generic template for the human soul. As the template was completely empty of memories, the artificial Fluctlights created using it were not as prone to collapsing as Fluctlight duplicates of already mature individuals. Upon being transferred to the Ocean Turtle by satellite, the template was used to create artificial people whom they could raise in a virtual environment to fulfill Wrath's ultimate goal, the creation of a highly adaptive artificial intelligence to replace human soldiers in warfare. The process of developing the artificial intelligence was accelerated through the use of the Soul Translator's Fluctlight acceleration function, which allowed altering the Fluctlight's perception of time and thus made it possible to have 1 hour in reality span over 41 days in the virtual world. As years passed in the Underworld, Kikuoka and Takadu observed that the artificial Fluctlights were absolutely obedient to the Taboo Index, a series of rules created by their own ruling organization. The inability to break any rules was detrimental to Wrath's goal to create highly adaptive artificial soldiers, thus they had to investigate the cause of this blind obedience. To this end, they had a number of Wrath employees raised alongside their virtual subjects in the world, leading to the observation that they all succumbed to law-abiding behavior to the point of becoming reclusive. Theorizing that the employees were simply unfamiliar with their foreign environment, Kikuoka had Protagonist, who has years of full diving experience, inserted into the simulation and raised alongside the artificial Fluctlights. To their pleasant surprise, subsequent observations of Protagonist revealed that his influence had caused one of the 2 children he had befriended in the world to violate the Taboo Index, that very behavior they were seeking. However, before Kikuoka and Takadu were able to retrieve the child's light cube, the world's authorities captured her and reprogrammed her Fluctlight, returning it to its state of unconditional obedience. Yes, they are talking about Alice. Alice, God, I need a breath. And yes, that's why it's called Project Alicization. I like Altercation better. Oh yeah, and I should mention that for even Asuna to get to the place all this is going on, you know, the Ocean Turtle, love that name. She got in contact with Kojiro Rinko, the former lover of Kayaba Akihiko, because it's always got to be tied back to him somehow. And no, you're not crazy, this is the first time such an important character is ever mentioned in the anime. So I hope that explanation made sense to you. I know it sounded like a lot of big words and backflipping just to get to the main point of SAO, which is teenagers in a virtual world surviving. That's because it was. I think you use all the big words and made up terminology they want. I'm still way less interested in what's happening now. I mean, yeah, sure, let's talk of Fluctlights, AI, and taboos, it's cool and fun, but as far as Kirito, you know, our protagonist is concerned, the one we're actually following, he doesn't know any of this shit, so why do we know all this now? Like, who cares? And I was right too, because right after they tell us all this, it just goes right back to following him in the more interesting fantasy world, where an entire 2 years has passed. Yeah, nothing interesting could have happened then. No, instead of cool fantasy world hijinks, we get an entire episode of exposition. Fun. And it was at this point I got less excited, because I remembered, oh right, I'm still watching Sword Art Online. Like, if there's any way I can describe SAO's plots to someone without them actually seeing it or knowing what's going on, I'd say it's like one of the greatest batters of all time in baseball stepping up to bat, and the perfect ball is thrown to him, everything is lined, the win and everything for the perfect home run, the biggest grand slam we've ever seen, and he decides to bunt. Because now, surprisingly, for the rest of this arc, we follow Protag in this world. Wow, too bad I already know what's going on now and just waiting for him to find out all the same information instead of being engrossed in this mysterious fantasy world he found himself in. Yeah, I was tuned out by the time I got to this Night Academy arc, and in the back of my head, I just thought, why does any of this matter? Think about it, we already know what's happening to Protag and why. We know these are AI programs and not players like Protag assumed at first, which was a huge misstep there. Like, Protag, and by extension us, assuming these were other players with how intelligent they were in this game world, it would have made the whole, you know, their AI thing hit harder if it came later. And yeah, I'll say it again, if I was not watching this for a YouTube video, I totally would have stopped after that exposition scene. But I did. I watched the remaining 40-something episodes, all of Altercation and the Underworld War, and I was right. It didn't change my mind. Actually, as it goes on, it gets worse. So back to the story, like I said, 2 years have passed and Protag and Yu-Gi-Oh! Are now in night school. So I'm gonna skip the night school. I hope no one's upset that I'm skipping the night school. All you need to know about it is it established the super bullshit class system that is typical in most Japanese fantasy writing. And specifically, there are two really over-the-top cartoony, obviously evil asshole senpai at the academy who hate the sword bros because they're filthy peasants, the scum. Kirito and Yu-Gi-Oh! Become elite swordsman trainees and then get their own personal valets, Red Hair and the other one. Unfortunately, Red Hair has a friend who is also a valet, and she's a valet to the senpai from earlier. And they apparently keep asking Red Hair's friend to do, well, when you see what they do in a few minutes, you can imagine what they're asking her friend to do. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Protag ask the senpais to back off, but they technically aren't doing anything violating the taboo index, and they're upper class, so they tell them to fuck off, you peasant scum. And then... the friend shows up at Yu-Gi-Oh's door because she's told to do something so outrageous that she complained to Red Hair and the other one, and the two of them stupidly go to the upperclassmen and talk to them. Yu-Gi-Oh! Realizing that's a stupid idea confronts them, and we see them tied up in bondage ropes as the two senpai proceed to grape them as Yu-Gi-Oh! And by extension us is forced to watch because that code 871 makes him unable to intervene because the taboo index forbids things like assaulting a noble but not grape. Now, I'm not going to show any of this scene because unlike the other ones that were, kind of funny because of how out of nowhere and tone deaf they were, this one is the worst one. It's in really bad taste. It's amazing how tone deaf it is and how bad it handles such a serious subject matter. Like I was legitimately astounded when watching it. And unfortunately, while this scene is uncomfortable, in bad taste, framed poorly, tonally confused, and too over the top for what is meant to be a serious crime, it unfortunately does serve a narrative purpose. And it's that Yu-Gi-Oh! Seeing an act so heinous and against his morals that he would break free of his programming and go against the taboo index. So he and Protag can get arrested and meet Alice. We will get there. What I want to focus on is why does it have to be grape all the time? Like the two senpai could have done anything to make Yu-Gi-Oh! Pissed off. Like why not just have him kill Red Hair and the other one in a rage or something? Right before this, there was this scene where Red Hair pretty much confesses to Yu-Gi-Oh! These two have a connection. Hell, he would have gotten pissed off even if they just beat her or something. I mean, he almost broke free one time when Alice was taken away as a kid. It's not too far-fetched. And, spoilers, we will see in the future that other people break free of this code due to people they care about dying or simply doubt in the actions of their leader. What I'm trying to say is, there was a reason for a grape scene. It's easy conflict. And again, it's to make Yu-Gi-Oh! And Protag, because he shows up later, of course, to seem cool by saving their waifus from two supervillains. And this is the worst thing about scenes like this. It shows how unimportant these two characters are, because this scene isn't to serve their own development as being victims of this crime. It's to further the development of the two male leads of the story. Like, I'm not calling them just Red Hair and the other ones just for a joke. I'm illustrating that even in the story, they are just plot devices used to further the real characters. I mean, that's just the big problem with the way the women in SAO are written. They're either just another piece of fodder for the harem after their whole character arc is done, or they're a victim, and sometimes they're both. And yes, I know these two come back in the Underworld War and matter more there, but besides one scene acknowledging them almost getting raped, this scene does not influence how they act going forward. It's the actions of Protag and Yu-Gi-Oh! That influence them, the men. Hey, at least Reki apologized to the voice actresses on Twitter. That's nice. He could have just not written it. I guess the dub actresses don't get anything. They don't get an apology or whatever, but I guess no one watches dubs anyway. Anyways, after that uncomfortable segment, Alice. Yeah, she's now an Integrity Knight and has no recollection of Yu-Gi-Oh! I guess she's more of a Pokemon card fan. In fact, she doesn't remember anything about her past life. Almost as if she's been brainwashed. Spoilers, she's been brainwashed. And anyways, after the two for some reason are allowed to take their swords with them to jail, because what would they fight with otherwise? In jail, Kirito finally uses that gamer knowledge as the two use their chains, which have the same object rating, so by banging them together, they break because they have the ability to damage each other. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted in Ordinal Scale, using gamer knowledge to do something that is not possible in the real world. I want more of that. That's the only time I'm going to be seeing something like this, isn't it? After escaping, the two find a magic door that appears before them. Inside is a lolly known as the Cardinal, and while Yu-Gi-Oh takes a bath, she begins to have an entire episode of exposition. Again, it should be a drinking game. Turns out Cardinal is the embodiment of the Cardinal system. This is another thing I don't think I mentioned in the last video, but a Cardinal system is essentially the system in all the MMOs of the world that, you know, manages everything about it. Like, Yui is a Cardinal system, just to give you an idea. And okay, unfortunately, there is no succinct explanation in the SAO wiki of the stuff I'm about to tell you. And again, it's a little teensy bit overly complex, so if I mess up anything, I really don't care. So the big organization that established the taboo index, all the laws, and the class system was the Axiom Church, and their leader is a woman named Quinella. When she was young, Nutella realized some things a bit sooner than others, like how to do magic for healing and killing. And by doing all that killing, she was able to grind levels so fast she was able to convince people she was sent by the gods and started building the Central Cathedral, the place Protag and Yu-Gi-Oh are at now, and established the Axiom Church itself. And things were looking pretty good after that, until despite being an AI, Nutella couldn't fight that pesky aging, and on her deathbed she found that one command that she needed that gave her access to every single command programmed into the underworld. She quickly made herself immortal and now became sentient, that she was an AI, what the underworld was, and the real world. While trying to make sure the only thing as powerful as her, the Cardinal system, got deleted, because she couldn't stand anything having the same power as her, she oopsies and instead burns the entire core principles of the Cardinal system into her own Flucklight. And that kind of made her fucking crazy, as now her only purpose is to regulate the world, and she did this by building walls to separate the people, establish the taboo index, freezing her emotions to stop a sub-process I'm not going to explain, and walking around naked. No one had any problems with that last one. And then when anyone questioned her, she would then abduct them and began experimenting on their Flucklights to figure out how to alter memories to make sure no one would have thoughts of an uprising. Those experiments succeeded, and those experimented on then became her Integrity Knights, like Alice. Unfortunately, being alive forever has a detriment when you're a computer, because Quinella's memory in her Flucklight soon got too full, so in order to retain future memories, she decides to get an external hard drive by finding someone with so much memory she could copy herself there and delete whatever's in her Flucklight now. This does not go as planned, as after copying her memory to a lolly nun, that sub-process, I'm not going to explain, takes over, as it was the Cardinal system trying to retake control. Now the Cardinal we know, after fighting Quinella with effects, escapes into the library we are at now, where she has stayed for 200 years waiting for someone who can stop Quinella. And that person who can stop her is, of course, Yu-Gi-Oh! Nah, I'm kidding, it's exactly who you think it is. Being a human, Protag is immune to Nutella's Flucklight manipulation, so he's here to save the day. So after that expository hell, Cardinal tells Protag and Yu-Gi-Oh that they need to climb the cathedral, which has 100 floors, very cute, and stab Nutella with these knives that will give Cardinal access to her database or something. And if they don't, Cardinal, thinking Quinella is too powerful, is going to use her power to simply delete everything. Kind of an overreaction. And if Cardinal fails, Quinella is too concerned with maintaining her power to be concerned with the Dark Territory, who is slowly amassing an army and will surely wipe them all out, because she has been very picky about her forces out of fear of them rising up and usurping her. So it's up to you boys to beat her with swords, and save Alice, I guess. And also find a way for Protag to get home. Feels like they kind of forgot about that one. So that was the first half of Altercation. And you may notice the segment is almost over, despite the fact that it's the halfway point. That's because the last half is a bunch of fight scenes. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! And protagonists fighting all the Integrity Knights. They are animated well, but hold no meaning outside of being a cool fight. Yes, I know these characters come back next season, but they're just as unimportant there. Just because a character comes back doesn't mean they're important. Eventually the bros do find Alice, and after some contrivance, her and Protag get stuck outside the tower and have to work together to climb up. It's here we find out, after of course she starts falling for him and becomes a tsundere out of nowhere, Protag begins telling her of her past life and that the church is kinda sorta evil. And for some reason she starts believing him, that this church she has served all her life as far as she knows is actually super evil. I mean, he's right, but I wish her heel turn took longer than one episode, and I think as far as these two characters are concerned, like a couple hours. But what girl can say no to that smile? When she starts questioning the church, that code 871 thing Yu-Gi-Oh had appears in her too, and she also overcomes it. And she did it without anyone getting sexually assaulted. Crazy, huh? Meanwhile, Yu-Gi-Oh fights and meets the guy. You know. The guy. The legendary hero I mentioned a while ago. Yeah, he's just another brainwashed integrity knight, I think something everyone called a mile away. Here the two have an okay fight, and Yu-Gi-Oh makes it to the top floor, and right before stabbing Quinella, she's like, hey, why don't you join me? And he says no, but then she gets naked, and I mean, I'd do it too. She's pretty hot, not gonna lie. Kirito and Alice make it back inside, run into Nutella's creepy factory of Dr. Manhattans, and then find the newest integrity knight, Yu-Gi-Oh! Gasp! But next episode, the two bros fight for like 10 minutes and he's immediately cured of his brainwashing, so what was even the point? And then this horny clown guy, don't ask, says he'll kill the trifecta if Nutella gives him that good, which he literally cries over. Which again, I'd do it too, she is really hot. He turns into a big fire monster that comes out of his crotch, again, don't ask. And the gang beat him in like 3 attacks. But now we got the 3 characters we started this season with, up against the big bad. Alright, it's all coming full circle. That's right, it's time for them to all stand around and talk at each other instead of fighting. What? Then Nutella summons a Bionicle made of super special sacred weapons that body Protag and Alice, so Yu-Gi-Oh uses a stabby stab to summon Cardinal, who heals our heroes. Now, with all the most powerful players here and a Bionicle, they all stand around and talk at each other. But then Nutella drops the bomb. It turns out the Bionicle is made of you, as she kidnapped the loved ones of the Integrity Knights and melted them down at the Lego factory into this thing. Cardinal, despite literally telling Protag she was going to delete everyone in this world's existence, is for some reason appalled by a simple mass murder, and instead of doing the thing she was waiting centuries for, stopping Quinella, she commits Sudoku by sacrificing herself because, I honestly forget the reason, I don't care to look it up. Show's almost over, let's wrap this up. Then Yu-Gi-Oh goes big brain and says, if you can make swords out of people, maybe you can make swords out of people. And Cardinal with her dying breath makes Yu-Gi-Oh into a big sword, destroys the Lego, and after cutting off Quinella's arm is shattered, reverts back to his human form with a huge minus on his speed stat. Protag then remembers, wait, I'm the protagonist. If I scream a lot and wear my original SAO outfit again, I'll win. And Yu-Gi-Oh's sword just became free, so one dual wielding later, and a moment I only think happened because Reki just read some Uzumaki, he beats Quinella. But he doesn't, because she's still alive and starts uploading her conscience to the real world. But before that, Horny Clown Man is also still alive. Can anyone just die right away in anime? Why is that never a thing? Anyway, he sets himself on fire and humps her to death. Okay, so the day is saved, except for all those people that died, including Yu-Gi-Oh, who Protag could have saved. I mean, he saved an AI before by pulling some bullshit hacking stuff out of his ass. His fucking daughter. But Yu-Gi-Oh's a real homie, and he's like, nah bro, cause I'm your bro, and she's your bitch, and I don't want to fight over my bro's bitch, and dies while taking Alice's memories with him. Kind of a dick move. Didn't even ask her if it was okay. Oh yeah, Alice got knocked out at some point during all that. I forgot to mention that. Either way, Nutella happened to leave her console open, which allows Protag to finally contact the outside world. Oh yeah, I forgot he was trying to, get home. But cliffhanger, as the series ends with the Ocean Turtle being sieged by terrorists, and Protag getting hit by some glitch in the Matrix, as he sees an image of Asuna descending upon him. I feel like it was this close to being good. I do think Altercation is the best SAO arc so far in terms of consistent highs, but there are also just as many lows, some of which I've already gone over. The main thing that kills this is the pacing. Exposition is delivered at the most awkward times, and for some reason characters can't do anything else while talking. They have to stand around or sit around in one location the entire time. And it's done in like the worst way, where it's just people talking as the thing they're talking about is shown on screen. Kind of feels like a PowerPoint presentation. I also felt the story got kind of lost a lot of the time on what we're doing. Feels like that happens a couple times in SAO 2. Like, I thought it would be about Protag getting home and Yu-Gi-Oh saving Alice, but I feel it got invested in telling me the history of this world too much and night school shenanigans. And look, I'll admit it's nice there was so much care and planning put into this world. The problem is it's never gonna matter. The way SAO arcs are structured is everyone takes place in a different MMO, so I don't care about any of these worlds, because no matter how long we spend there, no matter how interesting the world and characters are, man, it's not going to matter because we're just going to move to the next one. And that new world is going to have new rules with new characters and new everything, and we're just going to get stuck back in the same expository problems we've been having. And the underworld matters less because at least in the other arcs, the characters were players, in the real world that can come back in the story later. But everyone here are programs that exist in some hyperbolic time chamber that have even less chance of coming back because they're stuck in a computer. Alice sticks around, but we'll get to that later. Characters, protagonists, nothing new to add. He's pretty much the same piece of clay. I've talked enough about him. Yuichiro is a good character, by SAO standards, in that he has a goal and morals and a personality, all of which actually align with what he says and does. In any other show, he would be a side character, but honestly, I kind of wish he was the main character here. I mean, him saving Alice is the main driving force, but his problem is he's a male character in SAO. As we have seen, if you're male and not Kirito, you're either a jobber or dead, and I guess he lost that gotcha. His death could have made me feel something, but it fails because honestly, people have told me the season's so great because Protag gets a bro instead of a waifu, even though he gets Alice, so it's kind of a lie. But I don't really buy their friendship. I mean, I get that they are friends, but they're not like sworn brothers or even good friends, More like party members in an RPG who only hang around each other because their goals happen to beat the last dungeon. I wish instead of cutting between here and the real world, we just focused on them in this fantasy world, like they knew each other for 2 years, but we don't see any of that growing friendship. You skip ahead and they're best buds now. Okay, I guess. And yeah, they knew each other as kids, but those memories were sealed and only mattered when he was dying or when it was convenient. And I agree it's nice having a male character on par with Protag, but any of that goodwill is lost because they kill him at the end. Like, why? He could have stuck around. That's my other issue. It just feels like they killed him off just so there's no awkwardness when Alice is eventually added to the harem. I mean, it's exemplified with him straight up saying he's dying and he doesn't want to fight over Alice. Again, him taking Alice's memory with him was still kind of a dick move. Alice is boring. I know some of you might tell me to hold my horses because Alice gets more development in character in the Underworld War. No, she doesn't. She's your typical knight character, has a strong moral compass and swings her sword at any injustice, but is also a waifu because she gets embarrassed and is a total tsum tsum. Now let's squash this now. She can do all the big flashy magic she wants. She spends most of Underworld War fawning over Kirito, who she only talked to for like a day at most, remember, and being reduced to a MacGuffin in the second half where she barely does anything. I look forward to her being neglected in future seasons now that her arc is over. Quinella could have been a good villain. It's an interesting idea in the world of SAO to have an antagonist that is a sentient AI. That's awesome. I got so excited at the end when she was uploading herself to the real world. I was like, oh shit. And she gets in contact with the Death Gun people and starts taking over computers. This could have been a villain on the level of Brainiac from Superman. But we all know how that turned out. Now, she is the first true female main villain character, so that's cool, finally getting some kind of gender equality in SAO. Unfortunately, she again boils down to being just another crazy asshole. She's more subtle than the rest, but I call them like I see them. Altercation, while trying to fix some of SAO's biggest issues, unfortunately, still kept some major ones as well as cropped up a bunch of new ones. Alright, it's like 2 a.m, I'm fucking tired. Let's finish this up with the last season of SAO I have to watch, or part 2 of this season that is in and of itself split into 2 parts. The Underworld War. Gonna be real? I don't have much to say, it's really boring. Remember, we got all the exposition out on what this world is and everything in the first season, thankfully. So Underworld War is exactly as advertised. It is a war with big bombastic fight scenes, with some of the best animation in the series and effects that almost gave me a seizure, and I was so bored. A fight can look as amazing as modern animation will allow, but if there's no deeper meaning or I don't care who wins or loses, it's just pretty animation, which is cool and fun, but it doesn't hold my interest for long. So instead of just recounting the plot, I'm gonna kinda jump around a little bit while retelling it, just talk about whatever interests me. So after the Ocean Turtle was attacked by a small terrorist group, the attack messed with Protag's Flufflight and he has been put into a coma where he is still sentient, I guess, but can't move his body. Alice, who witnessed this, takes her new boyfriend, who could no longer escape, home to her village to protect him, since everyone at the cathedral sees him as the guy who murdered their holy leader, and the leader being dead has kinda fucked them, as now that Quinella is gone, the Dark Territory catches wind of this and is getting ready for a massive invasion. After months of taking care of protagonists, Alice sees some goblins attack her town and realizes she must rejoin the fight, and does so, bringing co-protagonist with her to the battlefield for some reason. There oh yeah, I forgot about this. The victims, they sort of acknowledge that they almost got raped, and you have a rare scene in SAO where multiple female characters comfort each other. Wow. I still wish that scene wasn't in it at all. So yeah, war is brewing as we get ready for an epic clash. Why did the victims bring Protag to the front line? Whatever. Back on the Ocean Turtle, Asuna, Rinko, Kikuoka, Takaru, and some jobbers have hidden themselves in another chamber and realize, oh shit, we're all kind of fucked, especially Protag. And they need someone to take Alice, remember she's the MacGuffin, to the MacGuffin place to save the day and hopefully wake up Kirito. So Asuna jumps to an extra STL unit to finally kick some ass. So you might be wondering by now, who are these terrorists? Well, remember that GGO scene from like 40 minutes ago I told you to pocket? That's right, these were the player killers the Goon Squad were fighting in the first episode, as they just so happened to be a small military force that just so happened to accept the mission to raid the Ocean Turtle and steal the super unique AI they made, being Alice. Why does it matter that these guys are also people from GGO? It doesn't. It's just so Sinon, that's Ass Shot, can have this weird dream where she gets her sweat flicked off. You seriously should look into some therapy, lady. And so when she fights him in the underworld, she can have another trauma episode, because let's be honest, it's the only thing her character is known for. And yes, that's literally the only reason they appeared at the beginning in GGO. Anyways, I was kind of half paying attention at this point, but basically the terrorists have 24 hours IRL to get Alice before the JSDF storm the Ocean Turtle. So the lead guy and this obvious member of Laughing Coffin go into the underworld because they seem to have like a million of these brand new super unique STL machines. Their new bad guy assumes the role of the Emperor of Darkness, leading the army of the Dark Territory, consisting of generic evil fantasy monsters, but this Dark Knight guy and his waifu don't want war. They want peace, the pussies. So the waifu, under the guise of sexy time, goes into Leader's bedroom to kill him, and she immediately fails and dies. Now, I will admit, I was super down for Leader at first. He was different than the usual crazy asshole. He was calm, cool, all business. His only concern is getting the job done, and him already being a merc for hire, and this being an AI world, he would absolutely give zero shits about what happens here. The place can burn for all he cares as long as he gets the job done. And this scene where he's choking out this character is honestly really well done and kind of chilling, as he just chokes the life out of her. We don't even see it, we just hear the sounds of her struggling until nothing, and then he just stares blankly at the corpse, not phased at all about what happened. I was like, holy shit, that's such a great intro for him. Like, we're actually gonna get something different for an antagonist now. So right after that, we get a flashback to when Leader was a kid and he killed some girl and he came in his pants after thinking he saw her soul leave her body. And the same thing happens when a Fucklight dies, so he comes in his pants again and makes that face. You know, every SAO villain makes, you know, that face. And we're back to square one. The other guy isn't much better. He's just an obvious member of Laughing Coffin because every bit of dialogue out of his mouth is about how he wants to kill something. And he's really here to just be a dick, and you know, he has this obsession with protagonists like everyone else in this universe and wants to make him suffer or whatever. The only thing that could have been interesting about him is, you remember in Gun Gale when you talked about Protag and that guild raiding the Laughing Coffin base and him killing those guys that gave him PTSD that triggers when it's convenient? Yeah, this is the guy that gave him the tip of where the guild was, which, honestly, even if it was done well, who cares? This means nothing. You know when Protag wakes up, he's just gonna beat him in one episode with bullshit powers, which is exactly what he does. You know, it's really hard for the show to build up a genuine threat when your main character easily beats everyone by yelling generic sword skills. Also, I hated it during his whole speech about how he is the most killingest guy of Laughing Coffin. Asuna keeps talking about how he made Kirito specifically suffer, and I hate it so much because we see that Klein and Asuna at least were there, and I'm sure they killed some people as well. Like, Kirito can't be the only one who took some heads that day. It's like, man, I don't know why, but for some reason it feels like this season specifically, they just have this super hyper focus on protagonists. Like, it's all about him and his trauma and his suffering and what he's going through during this freaking war. Like, they talk about him like he's Jesus Christ. Like, it just annoyed me so much more than usual. Like, look, I know he's the hero. We all know he's gonna get revived through the power of friendship to save the day. We all know that's gonna happen. It's the worst kept secret in anime. But the fact that characters talk about it like that's gonna happen is dumb. Sinon literally says it herself.
大丈夫。キリトはすぐに元気になるわよ。みんなが本当にこの人を必要とした時に。ね。
Like, it just makes every other character feel like props used to spread the message of Kirito. And it's so crazy that this season, where he is literally catatonic, I can say I hate him the most because of nothing he does. It's because everyone, especially the female characters, are just riding his cock so hard. And you know, that just made me realize why I don't like Kirito as a character. You know, I assumed, like most people, it's because of him as a character. You know, his writing, his motivation, whatever. But no, I don't like him Because to make him seem so super awesome and cool, they have to make every other character constantly say how super awesome and cool he is and turn them into some useless cheerleader to make him seem better. Like, everyone wants to be his friend, every girl wants to be his girlfriend, every warrior respects his skill, every villain thinks he is the biggest challenge to them and the only one who could even come close to stopping them, and every single character in SAO has some sort of obsession with him once they meet him once. And any character who has a slight chance of being on par or even better than him just suddenly starts sucking or dies. Like Asuna, a competent fighter who has been said on multiple occasions many times that she is just as good as Kirito. In this season, she has the ability to literally reshape the earth, yet even when they give her a badass moment fighting Laughing Coughing member with some really amazing animation, it means nothing because he's fine, because she can't save Kirito. That would be crazy. Women can't save men. Alice, the literal most important and most powerful person in the entire underworld, spends all of her time watching over Kirito and thinking about how she needs to do this for Kirito and how she wishes she could help Kirito, or about how she needs to be strong, like Kirito. Girl, you made a fucking spirit bomb out of the dead souls of fallen soldiers that wiped out an entire unit of the enemy forces. You don't need him. None of you need him. And I prop him up so much, but he doesn't deserve any of it. He's just a nerd. He doesn't go through any struggle or character development, no major arc that changes the way he sees things or how he acts. He's the same person. We're told he has by other characters about how he suffered. There's even this moment in this season where he's in this coma and he starts tearing out his own heart because, you know, he's such a good guy. He can't stand the fact that he killed and beat up a bunch of murderers and rapists so he can save his loved ones. What a nice guy. But outside of other characters telling us, or when it's convenient, he never shows signs of these traumas affecting him. He just seems like a dude that's bored and doesn't really care about anything because he's not currently gaming. I don't dislike Kirito because he's some ultra powerful badass with plot armor. I dislike him because the characters and even the people watching the show treat him like that, when in reality he's just a JRPG protagonist that gets no actual story or motivation, because we, the audience, are meant to project ourselves on him. And if that works for you, fine, more power to you. My words shouldn't affect your enjoyment or how you view the things you like. If they do, you probably didn't like it that much in the first place. But for me, I prefer main characters who actually have a story to follow. Yeah, I know, a long tangent from what I was talking about, and I'm tired of talking about it. Let's try to wrap this up, okay? Now I know the one big question you want to know is, where does Death Gun fit in all this? I mentioned Hilarious Morgue, but the guy who put Kirito in this position in the first place was a Death Gun member, and it is heavily implied that not only are there many more out there, but one has even infiltrated Wrath. Who could it be? Maybe Rinko has gone crazy after Kayaba abandoned her? Maybe this blonde guy Takeru? I mean, maybe he's not so trustworthy, he was just introduced. Well, guess what? The whole time, the traitor in Wrath, the one who corrupted the experiment, the one who initiated Code 871, keeping the underworld in check, the one who helped Quinella by giving her ultimate power with the admin codes. It was Yanai. What, you don't remember Yanai? He was that slug guy in Alfheim that almost raped Asuna with tentacles? I'm not making that up. The anime for some reason tells us this information. Why does that even matter? Like, this is such an underwhelming twist for what should be a huge deal. Did this guy even have any dialogue before this? Also, he literally dies in the next episode after we find this out. Like, how do you do this? Like, this guy's meddling literally kicked off the entire arc we are currently on right now. But he's just some jobber. I shit you not. He is so unimportant, the official SAO fan wiki doesn't even have an entry for him. But the SAO abridged fan wiki has an entry for him. Think about that. So the last thing I'll talk about is the ending, I guess. Again, SAO blows their load way too hard, except this time they might actually gone too far in terms of spectacle. So what happens is, the terrorists for some reason make the underworld and real world run at the same time and somehow give access of it to these filthy fucking Americans under the guise of it being a beta test for some new ultra bloody and realistic MMO. The Goon Squad also see this, and Ashot and Nemotits just kinda walk into Wrath HQ in Roppongi and use the STL units there so they can help out. By the way, you wanna know the first thing that happens to Emotits when she gets to the underworld? She is immediately tied up and molested by tentacles. But besides that, I was more shocked at the fact that Liz, Klein, Token, and Lolly give a speech to the Alfheim members to convert their accounts to get to the underworld and help protagonist. Now, yes, I could harp on some things, like it's super easy for Yui to just keep converting accounts from other MMOs, so the characters will always be ultra powerful, or why the players at Alfheim who don't know Kirito even bothering listening to this, or the content of the actual speech itself. I don't care about any of that, because the 4 most useless wastes of space in anime history actually did something. They mattered. That deserves a round of applause, gamers. Oh my god, give it up for the Goon Squad. That's a gold star right there. You know, you put that up on the fridge. So yeah, again, like the end of Ordinal Scale, everyone is here, all the jobbers we met before. Except the Gun Gale people, but they are barely characters anyway, so they don't even count. But wait! There's more. Because speaking of Ordinal Scale, out of fucking nowhere, Eiji shows up. Oh, I don't think I actually ever said his real name. It's the Giga Chad from the movie. And not just him, but even Yuna shows up. How? Did he keep the Vocaloid data of her? That's a bit obsessive. Then, the actual Yuna shows up. Who's supposed to be dead? What? Yeah, I know she's just data or something, but as SAO, this season has proven they're more than just data. Case in point, remember that fight I said Asuna had earlier? Well, guess who motivates her to take action? The ghost of Yuki. What? This is what I mean by them blowing their load. Literally everyone that has mattered is here somehow involved in the underworld. That is something that should be reserved for the series ending. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't see how they can continue SAO after this. I mean, they literally backed themselves into a corner by making the finale too extra. I didn't even mention Kirito when he wakes up, of course, wears his SAO outfit again. I'm starting to think he wishes he never got out with how much he keeps calling back to that place. And then he wins by beating the big bad, whatever that is, with... I wish I was making this up. Everyone in the underworld lending him their energy, even Yujiro, who is dead, so he can do a big spirit bomb sword slash. How do you continue this? Even at the end, they have a tease thing like saying Kirito will return, which I've been making a lot of Marvel comparisons, and if that doesn't prove my theory, whoever's making these loves Marvel, I don't know what does. But I think most of us assume they meant the Progressive movies, which started premiering after the season. But let's be real, when the current arc in the light novels Urinal Ring is done, or close to being done, they're gonna make an anime for it. I mean, do you know how much money this franchise makes? But whatever, the day is saved. Alice gets a new body in the real world that, thank God, the scientists made to look exactly like her body in the underworld, and not like the other robots we saw that were prototype bodies for AI. Good to know our tax dollars are going to make an AI fuckable. What else? Kirito and Asuna get trapped in the underworld for 200 years, but after getting out, just get their memories erased. What a waste of a cool idea. Okay, how about Hiko shows up at the end just to remind you he exists somehow in cyberspace as an AI or something. We already figured that out. Long Guy apparently stole Kirito's memories of those 200 years and keeps the AI on his computer. Can't wait for that to not get any payoff. And eventually the gang return to the underworld, and their technology has advanced to the point they mastered space travel, and now the victims from earlier are badass space rangers? Wait. All of those ideas are awesome. Why do you keep coming up with such good ideas and doing nothing? I'm done. I don't care about SAO anymore. I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just done. I don't care. I agree it has gotten better, but I checked out a long time ago. If you're a fan who got upset about something I said, please don't. Usually I invite, this kind of thing, like leave a comment if I piss you off, it's kind of a troll, but I don't care, and you shouldn't care so much about the words of someone who has completely checked out of the series. Can we just pretend we don't exist? But I'm not done. No. Since for some reason now, I apparently look at games based on anime, might as well complete this trilogy, and maybe next year, 2 years, 3 years from now, who knows when I'll actually do it. I'm gonna end this once and for all by looking at all of the SAO games and put this series to rest for good. They just made a new one too.